Welcome back to Case Studies. Excited for you to hear from Clint Romesha. He is an American hero. He is a Medal of Honor winner, and his story is absolutely inspiring. This is an excerpt from his presentation at the MW3 Conference.
Okay, Clint, thanks so much for being here. I wanted to ask you about the attitude of your group and why it was so important for everyone to be really united, and what kind of leadership you used to get everyone on the same page with their attitude.
That was just one day of action for us after we'd been there for about 3 months in Afghanistan. For me, that was my third combat deployment. I'd done 2 deployments to Iraq, a 13-month tour and then a 15-month tour. So getting over to Afghanistan, we knew this was going to be a different animal. And the year in preparation of building up to that moment, building the team, getting the guys in like Gallegos and Sergeant Kirk, Lieutenant Bunderman, young guys in like Copus and Jonesy. That's the key right there, is you got to build the trust in the team first before you can go execute something major like that. And it's one of those things in the back of your mind, you always think that's going to happen to someone else. That'll never happen to us. That'll always be some other unit, or you just don't think of that off the top of your head. And for those 3 months going over there, right away, to see the mental attitude of the guys. I said that was my third combat deployment. I'd been put in some sketchy locations before, but nothing like that. The reports that we'd had, hey, look, this outpost is going to be 30 kilometers from the nearest coalition forces. The only way in and out is going to be by helicopter. We're getting a hot shower once a week, hot meal once every 3 to 4 days. Priority of resupply was going to bullets and food and fuel and water, so the creature comforts you didn't have. And it was just amazing to see as we built that team over the year before going over there, was the mentality of some of these younger kids getting there. Like I said, I remember one of the first things I did when I got there is I wrote a letter home to my grandma, because that was what I like to do, is just put pen to paper and just kind of write thoughts down. And I sent my grandma a quick letter that just said, hey, we're here, we're all settled in, the morale's looking high, the guys are looking good, just gonna be a short 12 months, be home. This place is beautiful. It reminds me of growing up in the Warner Mountain Range in the Sierra Nevadas in Northern California. Every morning I get to look up at these beautiful mountains. Love you lots, Grandma, see you soon. A couple of weeks later, Grandma sent me a letter back, and it just started with, what the hell are you doing looking up? Everybody knows you take the high ground. Like, she knew that location was less than ideal. But like I said, those young men got there, and they could have looked at it as, woe is us, just sit there in a wall of pity and just despair. And that's the thing with the American soldier, is they go to these places and they get told to do these things on behalf of this country, and they embrace it with everything they have, because they're there with guys to their left and right, that they're not alone, that they have a team, and that team's going to pull through. And we know that we have people behind us back here in this country that are supporting us every step of the way. That, why do we do it? We do it because this is the greatest country in the world, and it doesn't matter what situation you put us in, whether it's down in a valley, these men and women are going to rise up and face the challenge every time.
That's incredible. So Clint, what prepared you for that leadership moment when you said, we're going to go out in a blaze of glory? Was there a mentor? Was there an experience? Or was it just instinct?
It was a combination of quite a few things. It was growing up and remembering what my granddad used to tell me about, never tell someone you're going to do something unless you're going to do it. Your actions will always speak louder than your words. So if you're going to tell someone you're doing something, you'd go do it. There's a lot of talkers out there, and there's very few doers. So be a doer, not a talker. Lessons my dad gave me is say, hey, if you're going to be stupid, you better be tough. And it was coming into the Army, 18 years old, back in '99. I had a great mentor, Sergeant Gary Antes, who, as a young PFC, kind of took me under his wing, and he taught me leadership lessons like, a great leader will never ask a soldier to do something they haven't already done or not willing to do themselves. And a great leader will sit there and change their leadership style for everybody below them and not expect all of those below them to change to your style or tactic. It was fast forwarding to my second Iraq deployment after we lost Staff Sergeant Snell. And Snell was an amazing just specimen of a human being. He was from Trenton, New Jersey. He was like 6'3", just 220 pounds of just chiseled muscle. He got drafted by the Cleveland Indians. He could speak multiple foreign languages. He had a bachelor's in poli-sci and a minor in math. He had all of these accolades behind him, and he joined the military a little later in life. And we always asked Snell, why are you joining enlisted? You could have been an officer and made more money, and you could be telling us what to do. And his mentality was like, no, I want to know what a soldier has to go through before I tell him what to do. And we were in a situation where, again, it was less than ideal. We knew something might happen, but Snell was one of those guys that would always do the right thing no matter what. And unfortunately, he'd gotten taken from us by a sniper. And First Sergeant Rivera, as we got Snell back to the aid station and we knew life was gone there, could just see how angry I was, because Snell was perfect. He always did the right thing. He was always on point. He was always alert. And First Sergeant Rivera just took me aside and he's like, you know what, Clint, stuff just happens sometimes, and it doesn't matter how great your guys are, it doesn't matter how great your equipment is, it doesn't matter how great your plan is, bad stuff can still happen, and it's what you do afterwards that affects that. So it was a combination of all of those kind of things coming together, and in that moment, when, like I said, we went from owning this outpost of about 150 meters long by 75 meters wide at the widest to owning 3 buildings, to knowing we had 9 guys that were cut off and isolated, knowing that roles reversed, I knew at any point Gallegos, Sergeant Larson, Sergeant Breeding, those guys would come get me. And it just became this moment that if we could still do something, because that's what we face in life. A lot of times we want to sit here and make excuses that, I got this sent to me that is a hurdle, an obstacle, and instead of making excuses and instead of sitting there thinking what you don't have, think about what you do have. And the one thing we still had was fight left in us. We still had at that point enough ammunition, and that's what we had to do is go get more ammunition, because once you're out of bullets, you can't fight. And it became that. Hey, let's just do what we can, and whether we make it or not, at least we tried doing something. Luckily, it worked out.
And that is an amazing lesson too that you can apply to parenting or leadership or anything, really. So the next thing I wanted to ask you is, there's a code in the military that no one gets left behind, no matter what the cost. So how can we apply that to anything that we're doing in life, whether that's with our families or in a business or in any kind of an organization we're part of?
It's part of that mentality of what builds loyalty. I used to talk to my guys like the duty, going back to values, because that's what I think we as a nation have been built upon, is these values. Sometimes we get stuck in our priorities, and priorities are always going to change, but these values are something you can always come back to and rely on. And for me, it was loyalty was a big thing. The value of duty for the guys would, like I said, that will get you to follow my orders. But if we have loyalty between each other, that'll get you to run through a hail of bullets for each other. And it's building upon that in a moment to realize that you don't have to do it alone, that no matter where you're faced at in life, that if someone can actually rely on you, believe in you, trust in you, like for me personally, I've been divorced, I have a second wife and 3 stepkids, and the thing I impress upon them, I'm not trying to be your dad, I just want to be someone that one day if you need something, you will call me, that you can trust in me, you can rely on me. I'm not trying to replace anything from your past or anything like that, but going forward, to be that person that people will sit there and be like, oh, that Clint, yeah, he's a guy that if you ask, he'll do something for you. He won't just tell you that he's going to do this, that, or the other. And that was, again, one of those values my granddad taught me, that, how do you want people to speak your name? Because the only thing we leave in this world when we're dead and gone, it's our names and our legacy. And how do you want people to reflect on that? You want them to say, man, that Clint, he was, I wouldn't trust him to watch my cat for the weekend. Or, that Clint, that's a guy that you could ask him for anything and you'll bend over backwards. And he was always a man of his word, and he was always trustworthy, and he was always honest, and he always had integrity, and he always did the right thing when no one was looking. And those are the things that I think we can use in not just military service, but everyday life, when there are business opportunities, try to raise the next generation of great Americans, to football teams and sports. It's just so universal, no matter what the situation is.
It's profound. Thank you. You wrote in your book, Red Platoon, quote, like it or not, there are 8 other guys with whom I served, to whom that medal rightly belongs, because heroes True heroes, the men whose spirit the medal embodies, don't ever come home. By that definition, I'm not a true hero. Instead, I'm a custodian and a caretaker. I hold the medal and everything it represents on behalf of those who are its rightful owners. First of all, you're a beautiful writer. Second of all, why was it so important to you to tell the stories of the 8 other men and not just take all the spotlight on yourself?
You know, it's one of those bittersweet things. As I reflect back, like I said, I got out of the Army in 2011. I went to North Dakota to work oil fields. I did what many veterans did that last year of military service. I tried to figure out what the next chapter in life was. I never wanted to make the military my career, but somehow I spent 12 years there. I figured if I could do 4 without going to jail, that would be success. So moving on, I put everything in a box and I put it in the back of my mind, taking the examples kind of my dad. He did 2 tours in Vietnam as an infantry guy. My grandfather, World War II, survived Battle of the Bulge. Like, they just went on with life. You know, they were proud of what they did and they appreciated it, but they wanted to go on with life. And so that's what happened. I pushed forward, and all of a sudden, 2 years later, I get this call and answer my phone, and it's, hey, this is Colonel Davis, G1 from the Pentagon. First thing in my mind is like, oh crap, what'd I do?
I'm in trouble.
I'm in trouble. Why is the colonel calling me? I've been out for 2 years. And like I said, I thought I dealt with all that stuff. Like I said, you don't wake up every day saying, I'm going to go win the Medal of Honor. No one wakes up and does that. It's not a Lifetime Achievement Award. It's not a popularity contest. It's for doing a certain thing at a certain moment. It's a bittersweet thing because you're honored and humbled to be acknowledged from it. And part of the process of the award is the recommendation comes from the guys you were on the ground with serving. And to know that my guys believed I did something, that they would recommend me for the highest military award that our country can give was amazing. But it was to turn around and sit there and think, well, I'm home. I got on with life. I've spent 2 Christmases with my kids, and I think about Gallegos and his son Mac, who's now in college up in Alaska. Like, Gallegos never got to see another Christmas or a Thanksgiving, and Stephen Mace, you know, him never getting to see his mom again out in Virginia. I reflect back to that day, and like I said, as I think about that day, I'll tell you, I don't remember ever worrying about being shot or killed or not coming home to my family or anything. That fear in my mind wasn't there. And it wasn't that I was trying to be brave or any of that. That just wasn't what was registering the fear. The fear is what was happening when I was listening to Gallegos on the radio and then calling overwhelming enemy fire and us being cut off from them, and then the radio going quiet and hearing and Sergeant Hart calling up, they got an RPG pointed right at me, and then the radio going quiet, and it was like we couldn't get to them. And the fear was to come home and to face a Gold Star family and say, I couldn't bring your son home. That scared the crap out of me. And it's truly that lesson of loyalty toward each other, that no matter what the costs are, if you still have a breath in your lungs, if you still have a little bit of movement in your feet, any one of those guys would have came and got me, and to make sure that my family got to say goodbye to me one last time, and that was the least you could do for someone else. And it's what's ingrained in that camaraderie of, it's a weird concept that you sit there and war is just horrible and it's nasty, but man, you learn so much about love in combat. You learn love for your brother, your fellow man, to watch those men that will put down their lives to protect others. And they don't do it for political reasons. They don't do it because, you know, we're waging war on a different idea. They do it for love out of those to the left and right, those to families back home, and they do it for the right reasons, and they do it every time and time again. That as you sit here and like I said, I reflect back, I feel dirty when I get called a hero, because my definition of a hero is those that didn't come home. I felt myself a warrior, and I got to serve alongside so many amazing warriors. And I'm proud to be a warrior, and I'll always want to be a warrior, and I hope my sons grow up to be warriors themselves, but to reserve that title of hero. Those are for every white headstone that's out in Arlington and every state national cemetery. Those are the true heroes.
So well said. Thank you for sharing that. Can you tell us about the 8 men, maybe some stories or just things that you would want other people to know about them?
You know, some of those guys were awesome. I mean, and it's hard to sit here and just really impress upon you how much they left for us to live forward with. And I think I met Sergeant Gallegos years before that battle. Just by happenstance, we were in Fort Knox, Kentucky together. We were going through reclass school, which we were both on the tanks at the time, weren't in the same unit, but we had to go to Fort Knox to retrain to be reconnaissance and Cav Scouts. I was a freshly promoted staff sergeant, and he was a PFC freshly promoted specialist. And we met for the first time at Fort Knox back in 2000, that was 2012 or 13. We weren't supposed to leave a certain radius on the weekends out of Fort Knox, Kentucky, but we'd snuck out and we went up to Six Flags up in Louisville. And some shenanigans happened in pursuit of that. I watched the specialist Gallegos at the time take a hit and take the blame for someone else's actions. Got himself put in a situation that he wasn't at fault for, but he basically took the fall for someone else, and that really impressed me with his mentality and knowing his background, that he grew up in Arizona. He was involved in gangs in high school, and that's the path he thought he was going to be on. He thought he was going to be in gangs and dead by the time he was 19 years old, and he decided to join the Army instead. And now he's got an awesome son, McCaden, that, like I said, is going to college now. I sit there and I think about Sergeant Joshua Kirk, who that man, he was with 173rd Airborne. He was in that part of Afghanistan 6 months before we went, and at the time in the Army, for every day you spent overseas deployed, you got a day back in the States. So Sergeant Kirk didn't actually have to deploy for another 6 months after we left. And his wife, Megan, and his daughters had just been born shortly before coming to us, and he decided he wanted to go over early and wanted to go with his military family and unfortunately leave his wife and his daughter back in Colorado Springs and waived that 6 months of dwell time because he was operating in the exact same AO we were about to be in. And he was the one that was telling us how steep these mountains are, how dedicated this enemy was to try and take us out. And that was instrumental in building that team over the year. He didn't have to do that, but that was the mentality of Sergeant Kirk, was if I'm going to go do what I'm doing, it all or nothing, and to make those choices. And unfortunately, like I said, he never got to come home. I could go on and on about those men, and it's one of those things I said, can't do anything to bring them back. I can't change the clock. I can't go back into the past, so I'm never going to live there. I'll talk about them. I'll reminisce about them. I'll think about what they impressed and left upon me, and I'll share that with all of you. And take a little bit of this weight that when I put this medal around my neck and I can put it on each and every one of you to help me carry it. That's my therapy. That's what does it for me, to make sure those men are not forgotten and that we live every day going forward, because the only thing I can affect is tomorrow. I can't change anything behind me. I can learn from it. I can grow from it. But if I sit there and I live in the past of that, and if I sit there and let that hold me back from tomorrow, I'll never reach it. And I can't thank you guys enough for allowing me to put that weight on each and every one of you that come here and listen to those 8 men that we lost, and to remember them always.
Thank you. Clint Romesha, thanks for being here.